I am May. For 22 years, I thought I understood what family meant. A roof overhead, warm meals, a few petty quarrels here and there. But on the third anniversary of my grandfather's passing, I learned a darker truth. Sometimes it doesn't take knives or weapons to tear a family apart. Sometimes all it takes is an envelope. That night, the room was dim, half cramped, half familiar. The thick scent of incense hung heavy in the air. Spoons tapped against porcelain bowls, voices tangled together into a melody I had known all my life. And then, ding-dong. The doorbell sliced through the warmth like a needle. My father, Henry, rose to answer. A package. He turned the label over. To Mr. Henry. For just a second, I saw a ripple pass through his calm eyes. My mother, Lana, reached out. Let me see. But father's voice came hoarse, unyielding. I'll do it. He tore it open. A single sheet of paper, thin, almost weightless, and yet the words stamped upon it were heavier than stone shackles on our feet. He read aloud, each word a verdict. Paternity results. Henry and Max, not a match. Something shattered inside my head. A sound like porcelain splitting after years of hidden cracks. Max, my 17-year-old brother, the boy who once wailed and begged for my toys, stood frozen, his eyes wide and unrecognizable. My mother trembled, ready to speak. Let me explain. But father cut her off, not with a shout, but with steel. Whose child is he? Silence. A silence so loud I could hear my own blood pounding. I wanted to step in, as I always did, to balance the scales. But this time, how do you hold balance when the ground itself is broken? Max's voice came, hollow, a child lost in endless dark. If I'm not your son, then who am I? If you asked me once what anchors a ship in a storm, I would have said, memories. But that night, I realized even memories can rust, turn into anchors that drag you down until you can no longer breathe. Max stood abruptly, his chair crashing to the floor. He stared at Mother, his eyes bloodshot, not with tears, but with a dryness more terrifying than weeping. Mother, he spat each word like fire. Whose son am I? Lana did not answer at once. She forced her back straight, hands trembling faintly on her lap. I saw the tremor. Max only saw the silence. My father, Henry, slammed his palm on the table. His voice struck like a hammer driving straight into the fracture. You want to hear it? Then let me ask instead. Whose child is he? The air grew heavy, thick as smoke. I turned toward Max, searching for a trace of softness left in him. But no, his eyes were stone, unyielding. And I remembered. Back in 6th grade, when Max tumbled down the stairs and broke his arm. Henry didn't pause, didn't question. He simply scooped the boy into his arms and sprinted through the alleys, sweat pouring down his back like rivers. Or that fevered night when Max shivered violently. Henry sat beside him until dawn, never complaining, never closing his eyes, just laying his broad hand across Max's forehead like a wall against nightmares. I wanted to turn to him now, to remind him, 17 years. What else could that be, if not father and son? But his voice cut through, sharp as ice. Don't you dare tell me I should call another man father in this house. That was when Lana spoke. Her voice was jagged, broken. That day, before we married, I had an accident. A man. His name was Kevin. He took me to the hospital. After that, you and I wed. And then, I found out I was pregnant. I wasn't certain. Max let out a laugh, if you could call it that. A laugh raw enough to wound. Not certain? So what am I then? A coin toss come to life. I grabbed his hand, desperate. Enough, Max. He yanked it away, shouting. Enough of what? Of living my entire life in this damned uncertainty? In his eyes, the memories I held of Henry, The protector, the father, splintered, breaking apart piece by piece. I could see Max loosening his grip on the anchor ropes, letting his ship drift recklessly into the storm. And I, who once fancied myself the pillar against the storm, for the first time in my life, felt small, powerless. They say words can kill. That night, I watched them murder a 17-year-old boy right before my eyes. Max stood in the center of the living room, his back rigid, his eyes bloodshot, like an animal cornered in a cage. His voice was so cold it sent a shiver through me. "I'm going to find this Kevin. I don't need to pretend anymore. I need to know whose blood runs in my veins." "Mother," Lana gasped, as though someone had punched her square in the chest. "Max, it's late. Don't go. Tomorrow I'll tell you everything." But Father, Henry, lifted his head. His gaze was dark, heavy. A block of lead hung around all our necks. His words hissed through clenched teeth. "If you step out that door, don't call me your father again." I heard my own heart shatter, shards slicing into my lungs. Max faltered for just half a second. I prayed he would turn back. But no, he sneered. A cruel, alien smile I had never seen on the face of the little brother who used to cling to me, hiding from stray dogs. "Fine. From now on, I have no father." He yanked his backpack off the hook, his hands trembling though his eyes never wavered. I lunged forward, grabbing his arm. "Max, don't go alone. You're not ready for what's out there." He glared at me. "Then stay here. Play the pillar against the storm like you always do." I screamed back, "If you're the ship, then I'll be the one rowing beside you. I won't leave you." He froze for a moment, then turned away. This time, he didn't shake me off. And I understood. I had just tied myself to a vessel heading straight into the storm. We walked out the gate together. Behind us, Henry stood like a statue carved from rage. Lana collapsed into a chair, burying her face in her hands. I heard the sound of a strangled sob, too broken to become a cry. Grandmother Teresa spoke then, her voice raspy but sharp enough to cut Henry's skin. What kind of man wields his pride like a knife, only to sever his own child with it? Uncle Ben stumbled after us. "May, Max, don't!" But I pulled my brother's hand with iron resolve. I knew, if I looked back, even once, I would crumble on the doorstep. On the road, Max's breath came in harsh bursts. He snapped, "You think I'm wrong, don't you?" I steadied my breathing, forcing calm into my voice. "You're right to want to know who you are. But you're wrong if you think knowing will magically hold that house together. No one is staying, Max. If you go, I have to go too." Max tightened his grip on his backpack strap, silent. The sickly yellow streetlights stretched our shadows across the pavement, long and thin, like two strangers fleeing from a courtroom verdict. I knew from that moment on, we were no longer just siblings under the same roof. We were fugitives, carrying the heaviest sentence of all, shattering a home. They say expectation breeds disappointment, but Max didn't care to listen, and I no longer had the right to stop him. We followed the address from the hospital records. It led us to an old cafe tucked away on a shadowed street, its faded sign like a memory bleached by time. Max's phone trembled in his sweaty palm, though the night wind was cool. He glanced at me, his voice cracking. "What if he denies it?" I answered, steady as I could. "Then you'll have one more name to hate. Better that than living your whole life with a question mark." And then he appeared. Kevin. Not imposing. Not the phantom father figure a boy might have imagined all his life. Just a weary, middle-aged man, shoulders bent, eyes ringed with exhaustion, walking as if half-woken from a broken dream. He looked at us. "And you are?" Max spoke first, his words trembling yet sharp. "I'm Max. My mother's name is Lana. Do you remember her?" For a few seconds, Kevin froze. Then, slowly, he nodded, his voice hoarse. I remember. I once took her to the hospital. That year, on a rainy night. She was terrified. I stayed until morning. Max's tone hardened, bitterness leaking through. And then you vanished. Kevin dropped his gaze. I was sent away on duty. When I returned, I heard she'd married. I thought, disappearing was the kindest choice. A bitter laugh slipped from me. Kindest for whom? For you? Or for the child who hadn't even been born? Kevin clenched his fists, his knuckles white. If you wish, I'll take a test. But hear me. No matter what the result says, I was already guilty the moment I chose silence. My silence was my crime. Max slumped into the chair. The sound scraped harshly against the floor, dry, brittle, like his own breaking heart. He stared at Kevin, his eyes filled with both hatred and hunger. Do you know? For 17 years I imagined what you were, a hero who lost his way, a coward, a ghost. Now I see, you're just an ordinary man, and that hurts more than if you had been cruel. Kevin didn't argue. His voice came soft, worn. If I could choose again, I would never have left. But life doesn't give us if. I wanted to rise, to walk away. But Max didn't. He sat there, his gaze drilling into Kevin as if trying to scrape something noble from that weathered face. And then, his phone rang. The screen lit up with 2 words, Henry calling. Max looked at me, his hand trembling. In his eyes swirled a strange chaos, a child still desperate to be embraced, and a young man cornered to the edge of his own will. I nodded. Answer it. The phone's vibration slapped against the silence, relentless. The name glowed bright on the glass, Henry calling. Max stared, his fingers shaking violently. I knew what was screaming in his head. Why call me now, after erasing me from the family with a single sentence? I whispered, Don't run. Answer. He drew a breath and pressed the button. Henry's voice broke through, hoarse, strangled, as if someone's hand still gripped his throat, yet he forced the words out. Where are you? Max bit down his rage, replying flatly, Out on the street. Silence. I thought that would be the end, that the call would dissolve into nothing. But then Henry spoke again, each word heavy, deliberate. I'm sorry. For what I said. No matter what. This house still has room for you. Come home. The rest, we'll face together. Max choked. His lips pressed so tight they split, a bead of blood blooming at the corner. His eyes, raw and crimson, brimmed with tears that refused to fall. He whispered, almost to himself, Am I still your son? Henry didn't falter. He didn't dodge. His voice came low, trembling, yet steady enough to pierce through the night. I don't know how to explain bloodlines in a way that makes sense, but one thing I know for certain. For 17 years, you have called me Father. And that, Max, that is the truest thing in this house. I was stunned. The same man who, just hours earlier, had slammed the table and slashed the air with the cruel blade of, Don't call me your son's father, was now trembling, apologizing, like a child who'd broken his own toy and begged not to be abandoned. Max buried his face in his hands. His shoulders shook, not from hatred, but from the shattering realization that maybe his father was simply human, not the unbreakable monument he had once imagined, but a man, capable of anger, of jealousy, yet also of fear of losing his child. Through sobs, Max whispered, Dad, wait for me. Henry answered instantly, clutching the words like a lifeline. I will. I'll wait. The call ended. The silence between me, Max, and Kevin grew unbearably heavy. Kevin finally spoke, his voice rasping, ragged. You already have a father, one who can admit his wrongs and ask forgiveness. Don't throw him away. just to chase me. Max didn't look at him. He rose sharply, grabbing his backpack. Then he turned to me. Let's go home. In that moment, I understood. It wasn't the meeting with Kevin that saved Max. It was Henry's call, bitter, broken, and desperate, that pulled my brother back from the abyss. The iron gate groaned open, like the sigh of a house split in two but still struggling to stand. Max and I stepped inside. No one spoke a word. My father stood in the center of the living room, as if he had waited for this moment for centuries. His eyes locked on Max, not the sharp blade they had been earlier, but the gaze of a man who knew he had severed his own hand and now prayed it might grow back. My mother, Lana, sat pale-faced, yet her head unbowed. She looked like someone ready to take every blow upon herself, so long as her child still had a place to return. Grandmother Teresa leaned on her cane, her eyes fixed on Henry. Don't speak another word that might make my grandson lose faith. Once was enough. Henry swallowed hard, then spoke. Slow, heavy, each syllable dragging. I'm sorry. I let my anger destroy what mattered most. Max, if you can still give me a chance, I promise I will never let it happen again. Max clutched the strap of his backpack, his eyes still swollen and red. He stepped forward, his question cutting like a blade against his father's throat. Do you still see me as your son? Henry trembled, but he didn't retreat. You have been my son since the day you cried your first breath. Paper doesn't raise a child. I did. And not a single day has passed when I stopped loving you. Lana broke. Tears spilled as she gasped, words torn from her chest. My son, I'm sorry. My greatest sin wasn't that night. It was 17 years of silence. If you want to search for the truth, I will walk with you. But don't hate me. Don't turn me into your enemy. Max closed his eyes, and at last the tears fell. His backpack slipped from his grip and thudded onto the tile floor. His voice came broken, splintered. I don't want to trade one father for another. I just want to know who I am. But I don't want to lose this home. Henry stepped forward and pulled his son into his arms. He trembled so hard even his shoulders shook. At first, Max was stiff, rigid as wood, but slowly he collapsed against his father's chest. I could hear it clearly, their hearts beating together, though one heavy, the other quick. Relief flooded me. Tears blurred my vision. In that moment, I knew we had made our choice. Not between Kevin or Henry, not between blood or paper. We chose to call Henry father. We chose to stay. The next morning, sunlight broke through the window slats, spilling onto the worn tile floor, glimmering as though the storm had never come. But I knew the house was cracked, and no single night's sleep could mend it. My father, Henry, swept the yard. His motions were slow yet filled with an unusual patience. Beside him stood Max, holding the dustpan. The sight was simple, ordinary, yet it felt like a ritual of reconciliation. A father cleaning the ruins, a son relearning the word dad through quiet action. In the kitchen, Mother Lana sliced fruit. Her eyes were still swollen, but her hands were steady. When I stepped closer, she whispered, "Cut yours thin, or you'll hurt your hand." An ordinary sentence, nothing special. But that ordinariness, that fragile, everyday normalcy, was the most precious thing our family had left. Grandmother Teresa told Uncle Ben a story about the wooden bridge back in the village, the one that shook wildly each rainy season yet never collapsed, because those who crossed it always knew to pause when the winds grew too fierce. Her words sent a chill through me. Perhaps my family was that bridge, worn and trembling, but still standing, so long as we knew when to stop and hold still. Max stepped in, turning to Henry. Let's go do the test today. Father nodded, his voice firm. Yes, but whatever the result says, tonight we still share dinner together. I watched them, their eyes meeting, not daggers this time, but two fractured mirrors learning to reflect each other. The cracks remained, the angles still off, but at least they dared to look. Carrying the fruit platter to the table, I lifted my gaze and saw my grandfather's portrait. In my heart, I whispered, as though speaking to him across the years, "Grandpa, our home has a fracture, but through that crack, light seeps in. I cannot choose who gave me life, nor who gave life to Max, but I can choose to call Henry my father. I can choose to call this place my home, and I choose to stay with them." One day, Max may hold the DNA results in his hand. Perhaps those cold numbers will point to another truth. But when that day comes, I want him to read it at this very table, amid the clink of spoons against bowls, Ben's careless laughter, Teresa's quiet cough, and Henry's heavy yet warm hand resting on his shoulder. Because paper may speak of blood, but a home speaks only of the heart. And the heart, mercifully, still beats. Still beats.